Hello, everyone. We'll give everybody about another minute to join in, and then we'll get started. So I just give everybody a second to get everything caught up and get ready to get rolling, and we'll start in about a minute whenever the stragglers get in here. All right, everyone. Welcome back. We're going to get started here. My name is Joey, and I'm the Director of National Sales here at ValueLink. It's been incredible seeing your response. So far, thousands of you have joined us for live sessions 1 and 2, and we're thrilled to keep this momentum going. If this is your first session with us, welcome. This 4-part UAD 3.6 training series was built specifically for Connect appraisers like you to help stay ahead of the UAD 3.6 rollout. In today's session, Josh will take a deep dive into property data. Think ADUs, outbuildings, site details, GBA, and more. Just a quick heads up, these sessions do not count towards your CE credits, but we will be providing a certificate of recognition to appraisers who attended the sessions live with us. But before we begin, just a quick reminder, we will be at Valuation Expo next week, including myself. Scan the QR code on the screen to book a one-on-one with us. We'll be at booth 52. Now it's time for Josh to get started. You ready, Josh?
I am all ready. I'm ready for this, and I'm ready to meet you at booth 52. Not meet you, I know you, but it'll be great to see people there, and it's exciting that ValueLink is sending their team. I know we're sending our team as well. So if you are there, reach out to any and all of us. That would be excellent. So just a little bit about myself. You can see on the screen here, we're not going to focus on it. This is session 3. You probably have a feel for who I am. You can certainly watch the recording, pause it if you really want to study it, but we're not going to take the time to take a look at that. Feel free to get to our website. We have a lot of different learning opportunities, a lot of different resources. And just a reminder here, I am representing only myself. I am speaking only on behalf of myself, and nothing I'm sharing is any sort of legal advice. So, Session 3, we've made it this far together. Session 3 is going to focus on the data requirements in certain sections of the report. So we'll actually look at some sections that we haven't touched on. Obviously, in different contexts and perspectives, we've looked at sections in reports, both on slides and by actually scrolling through reports. But we're going to look at some we haven't looked at or looked at specifically, all right, in any detail. But just to recap, we looked at the overall concepts, the overall organization, the overall redesign of the report, and reference materials. Then we looked at the approaches to value as well as the reconciliation in session 2. And here we are in session 3. And in the 4th session, we will take a look at the certifications, the disclosures. Sometimes we think of them as pre-printed content, but don't think of them quite as pre-printed content, because we'll actually see those are going to actually self-adjust based on the assignment type and what you input to your software and into the data set. So we'll also recap the reference materials in the 4th session, and we'll also look at the updated, the updated update report and the updated completion report. Those are much, much shorter, of course, than the URAR, so we will just spend a few minutes looking on those so we're familiar, at least, with those. But let's dive into today's session. We'll take a look at dwellings and outbuildings. We'll take a look at units and and accessory dwelling units, ADUs, some site information, the exterior and the interior sections, and condition and quality ratings. And there are some changes related to condition and quality ratings, as well as the ratings we give for updated, not updated, and so on. So be sure to really, key in on those when we get to those sections. And so, oops, it's not intentional, excuse me. So what we're going to do today is we are going to look at screen images on the slide, and then we will scroll through the report to sort of get an overall feel of what we just looked at. So we'll look at it sort of in both ways. So remember, we're focusing on the new report format, not on your specific appraiser writing software. How do I do this function? Is it a drop down? Is it going to be a bullet list? Those are software questions. All right. We're also not looking at, well, how do I conduct a highest and best use analysis? How do I derive my adjustments? Things like that. That's not related to what we're focusing on, the new report format. And we're also not concerned with, hey, when is a listing required or other types of policies and requirements, right? We're looking at the format of the report itself, right? And we still have to go to our handbooks and our selling guides and so on for the applicable assignment conditions with our various assignments. Will video recordings be available? Yes, video recordings will be available on both ValueLink's and Walitt Solutions websites. All right. I do see a comment here that the talk is repeating. I've been on some other calls this morning, so hopefully it's not too bad. And it's echoing. Well, we're going to make do with what we have. I don't see that I'm using a different audio, so hopefully that's going to work at least for most people. And I'm sorry if you're experiencing any sort of audio issues. Where can I get the resources that we're looking at, like the Appendix F1, or what about the supplemental policy guide that they've issued? All right. Well, we're going to have those on our websites. All right, we'll have those on our websites as well. We're not looking at the supplemental policy guide in this 4-part series because, again, we're not talking about policy, but it is important as a resource for you as we wade into this new world. So we will be making that resource available to you. All right, so we've looked at the new organization, the basic layout. We've looked at approaches and reconciliation. Are we still going to see samples? Yes, we'll still see work samples. All right, so let's get to our first concept here. Let's get to this first concept, dwelling versus outbuilding. You think, gosh, Josh, this cannot be that complicated. And it's not, but it's worth visiting on the difference here. All right, so dwelling, when we see the word dwelling, think of it as a building that contains the main living units. All right, so we're just trying to sort of simplify and boil these things down, right? So there could be more than one dwelling. Think building. There could be more than one building, right? For example, a 4-unit could have units in multiple buildings. You could have a 4-unit property with 3 buildings. Maybe, one building has 2 units, the next building has 1 unit, the next building has another unit. All right, so just keep in mind, dwelling is for the main living units or unit, and it's referring to the building. All right, so if you have 2 buildings, you have 2 dwellings on that property if it's containing main units. Then we have an outbuilding. So within your software, within the system somewhere, and again, it's going to look different. You're going to have a different experience for different softwares. You're going to be able to identify, okay, am I sketching and describing all these characteristics and the room counts and the levels related to a dwelling? Or am I doing all those things related to an outbuilding, which could be a workshop area? It could be a storage area. It could be a pool house. It could be having a garage, maybe with some other areas as well. And this is an outbuilding. All right. It could have an accessory dwelling unit that's separate from the dwelling. Okay, so you could have two dwelling buildings, and I'm just going to kind of tag on that word buildings, right? We could have two dwelling buildings, and then you could have a separate outbuilding which has an ADU in it. All right, so you see how we're going to have to classify those. We're going to have to disclose that. It'll show up on the report, and we'll take a look at that. And it will also show up in the headers, essentially. All right, so we've talked about this a little bit in the section headers, those black tabs. All right, this is an example. This is an illustration that we're looking at. All right, so dwelling exterior. That's going to be a section in the report. Now, if you just have one unit because it's just a house, well, then you'll have dwelling exterior. That's easy enough, right? But if you start getting other buildings and other units, multiple units, so now we have a dwelling exterior for building one. It'll cover the exterior characteristics, and then a section after that will be, now we need the unit interior of building one, where unit one is. Okay, so in this illustration, we're assuming the property is a 3-unit property with an ADU. I know that's maybe unusual and we're just using it to illustrate here, right? And then we have the dwelling exterior for building 2. And then we have the associated sections that the software essentially builds, if you will. It's building these sections for you. They're displaying, they're populating, they're opening for you, right? So now you can describe the interior of Unit 2, which is in Building 2, and you can describe the interior of Unit 3, which is also in that second building. Okay, so we're going to need to determine and put in our report how many units excluding ADUs are there. So we're sort of separating these. That's why we needed to know, what do we mean by a dwelling, right? And then the standalone, in this case, in this illustration, it's a standalone ADU. It's in an outbuilding, and that's why it's standalone. It's not part of the house. It's not attached to it. It's not built into it, anything like that. We'll have a section for the exterior, and then we'll have a section for the interior. Okay, so let's take a look at how it might look. Again, we're going to scroll through reports. As time allows, we might scroll through it fast, but we'll take a look at that. But here's some images of it. All right, so here's your subject property section, and we have, in this illustration, we're just following through with this illustration, 3 units excluding ADUs, and we have 1 accessory dwelling unit. Okay. And then we have the dwelling exterior for building 1. And we have a section for the interior of unit 1, which is in building 1. All right, so those opened up, those were sort of created, so to speak, in the software to generate that into the report. And then we move on, if we were to look at this hypothetical report for illustration, we would see another section, dwelling exterior of building 2. Remember, this was a 3-unit with 2 dwelling buildings, and then we had a separate standalone ADU. So this is covering the dwelling buildings at this point. And then we would, of course, have the interior of Unit 2 in Building 2. We'd also have the interior of Unit 3 in Building 2 in this hypothetical illustration. All right. So that's just kind of an idea of, we're capturing information about the exterior of the structures, how many ever necessary, and then we discuss the interior unit by unit. Okay. Everything clear, everything coming through, people hearing. I do see that some people said, oh, it's echoing, but then I had about 30 people saying, oh, I hear everything fine in the chat. Okay, would an ADU that is attached to the dwelling be listed as an outbuilding? It would be listed as an attached ADU there. Okay. And if the ADU guest house is attached, would an ADU, and if the ADU guest house is attached. Yeah, so it wouldn't be a standalone then. And you would choose other options. So this is just an illustration, right? So we have, you have choices here, standalone. There's standalone, accessory dwelling unit. It's additional, so we can go to our glossary, we can learn about that, and we can also take a look at the choices within Appendix F. If we've got time, we can search for F through F. Otherwise, you have F available to you. It's a public document, so you could always look up that. There's over 365 pages in Appendix F, so we're obviously not looking at every detail there, but these are good questions, and to really find, go into all those details, the answers are there. I just want to kind of at least hit the main ideas here on all of these. So why is the ADU not a dwelling, but it's considered an outbuilding? It's just how they've set up. If it's a standalone ADU, it's a separate building outside of the main dwelling structure. So they call it an outbuilding. What kind of outbuilding? It is a standalone ADU outbuilding, and so on. Okay. So why they did that, I mean, that I understand how it works mechanically here in the data set, but why, that would be a question for Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. I didn't design this, so I'm not really sure like why they're doing that. Okay, I do see others saying your volume is low. I don't know the solution to that. I've been on a few calls already this morning. I don't know if our friends at ValueLink have any way of turning it up, but I have. I'm speaking loudly, and I've been seeing a lot of people saying no problem there. So if you have some tech issues, I apologize for that, but it looks like things are working for the large majority of folks here. Okay, let's talk about the site section. Site section has a lot of very familiar and common sense subsections, right? It has some general information. We already have a site section that has general information. We are going to look at that though. Okay, because there's a few added items. We have something for site influences, view and impact, site features and impact, and then we have some other items like utilities, defects, damages, and deficiencies. We've looked at that concept in a previous session where we have that recurring in about 5 or 6 sections, and you can identify defects, damages, or deficiencies depending on where at the property you saw it, and it will go in the correct area of the report. All right. Commentary, of course, and exhibits. All right. So let's take a look at some of these that I've bolded here just to see some of the nuances of the changes. No real big surprises, though, I would say, with the site section. Conceptually, very easy for the most part to sort of grasp these. All right. So total site size makes sense. Okay, now we can say number of parcels. Well, we've always been able to list, with a comma in between. Okay, this has, 2 or 3 parcels or something like that. But we've never really had a field to actually indicate it and communicate it in a consistent location in the report. So, Siri and Dawn and Rebecca and Todd and Richard and myself, Josh, we all typed that information in different places, right? If there's more than one, then we're going to have the next field pop up. If there's only one, it's not going to ask whether the 2 parcels are contiguous. But in this case, it says, oh, you have 2 parcels, you have more than one. Are they contiguous? And in this case, in this illustration, the answer is no. And so then it asks another contingent question. It says, well, what divides them? Is it water? Is it road? Is it, and so on and so forth. Remember, even though you have some pre-select choices in most fields that we look at, we have the commentary space. So don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. They're always placed to type. All right. Here you can list the parcel numbers based on the number of parcels. You'll have different numbers of lines. Nothing surprising in zoning here. If we have non-residential use, how many of you ever, let's see, how many of you ever appraise something where maybe the term hobby farm is used? Right? Okay, well, we do have some non-residential use, or maybe there's some sort of office, or maybe there's some sort of you know, they have a hair salon at the back or something like that. Okay, so you say yes. What is it? Have there been modifications? Describe the modifications. So you can see how this is all contingent, 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 contingent. One field is contingent on the last, right? All right, and nothing really crazy over here. Some property access, talking about the road and so on and so forth. Okay, here's some other subsections within the site section. All right, we have the concept of location right now, but they've sort of split it out a little bit more detailed. They said, actually, let's just call it sort of site influence. All right, in this case, okay, overhead power lines, there's a body of water, there's some sort of, in this illustration, some sort of apparent environmental condition. We have commentary, free-form typing. We have commentary, free-form typing. We have the concept of impact that we're used to doing already. And proximity and detail are somewhat specific depending on what type of influence was selected. And so you can see here, if it's off-site, it asks for the approximate proximity to it. All right. Whereas here, if it's on site, they're not asking for the distance because it wouldn't make sense, right? It's on the site. We're not going to measure any distance to that. All right. So a little bit more in terms of, remember, we talked about these tables that we see. These tables throughout the report have very prescribed choices. Where do we look if we say, oh, you know, I'm looking through, I want to see what our choices are going to be in that drop down or radio button or checkbox, whatever the feature is. We go to which appendix? Which appendix is our friend? It's F. F like Frank. Appendix F like friend, we'll say. All right. There is a new question here related to water frontage. My friends who I've done some CE for in Wisconsin were schooling me once on all the different types of water, right? Water can play a real key role. So they have some prescribed fields there. If there is no water frontage with private access, this doesn't appear. All right. And view and impact to value and marketability. We've already looked previously that they've added range of view as a consistent way of communicating that concept. Of course, we have commentary to describe any specific nuances. All right, and then other site features. All right, so if we believe that the topography being flat is important here, you know, oh, look, we're talking about the topography here, or if it's hilly or something like that, right? Let's now move on to the exterior section or sections, right? Because we know if there's more than one building, it's going to ask about those buildings, right? And don't understand full range of view. So if view, when they're asking for the extent of the view, is it a partial view? Is it a full view? And if there's a nuance to it, then it goes in the commentary. But you choose the best, the best answer, almost like a multiple choice test, right? So if we were to do something like range of view, we're going to see we can choose full, partial, seasonal, or other and describe it. And even if you choose any of the first three, you can still add commentary. Okay, so let's move on to dwelling exterior. construction method, front door elevation, not as weird or scary or odd as you might think. Converted area, exterior quality, and exterior condition. Right? We have talked about the concept of having exterior quality and condition and interior quality and condition when we talked about the sales comparison approach. We also then said that there is overall quality and condition ratings. All right. So they've added those interior and exterior because we all know that sometimes there's just not, they're different. The interior and the exterior quality or the condition may be significantly different. So here is the dwelling exterior. Let's take a look first at the front door elevation. This is a risk factor. Evidently, lenders and the GSEs have done some studies that if they're, depending on, if you're right at ground level at the front door, it typically has less damage in certain situations versus more damage like floods and things like that. So it's just a risk factor. And this is really just looking at the front door threshold, in other words, where your foot goes when you're walking through the door, foot level, so to speak, and how much to the dirt right below that that point, all right, below the door threshold. So if I were to look at this and I say front door elevation, we're going to search for that in our appendix F. You can see there's choices here. Okay. What do we do when there's multiple units? Well, when there's multiple units in a building, choose the answer for the unit door with the lowest elevation from grade. So let's say you have a unit with 3 doors. Go with the lowest of the 3 for that unit. Okay. And if it's high-rise, mid-rise, and low-rise buildings, front door of the unit, not the building. They're focusing on the unit. Where is that unit specifically? Does that include steps up to the door? So what did I say in terms of the measurement? The measurement is measure where your foot is at the door, so the threshold of the door, down to the dirt, down to the ground, down to the dirt, the ground. Okay, so steps don't have anything to do with it. They're looking at the door threshold down to the ground. All right. All right, so construction method, it's asking because, again, we don't have forms, do we? Right, so let's say we have a site-built house and a manufactured ADU, right? When we're talking about the exteriors of these we're going to have 2 different answers, right? We're going to have an exterior section for the house. We're going to have an exterior section for that manufactured house if it's being used as an ADU. All right. How many units are in this structure, right? If we have multiple units, like a 3 unit, maybe it's 3 all in this one building. Maybe it's just 1 and in the next building there are 2 or whatever the makeup is. All right, we're providing information about features just like we do today, a little bit more detail spelled out in real English language, right? So we can choose the information that's appropriate, what types of windows, what types of walls and trim. Here's some comments, free-form comments. Here's some condition free-form comments as well. Okay, so for a 3rd floor condo, what would we measure for front door? I'll turn this over to the audience. Type in the chat. For a 3rd floor condo, which would you choose based on what we just said? Solve our own problem. Go to the source. We went to F because you might be wondering this in 3 months. And you say, oh boy, I don't remember exactly what Josh told me. Well, it's not about what Josh told you. It's about what Appendix F tells you. And we have a lot of great answers coming through. 10 feet or more, 10 feet or more, 10 feet or more. Look at these choices, right? If you're on the 3rd floor, my guess is you are higher than 10 feet above the ground. But I suppose there could be something weird going on. But regardless, use Appendix F to take a look at that. Here's continuing on with the dwelling exterior. Here's another example. And this is just to show converted area. If you say, yes, there's a converted area, now it pops up other information saying, well, what's been converted? And is it similar to the rest of the living area? And yeah, and Stephen brought up, well, how many levels are below ground? So again, as I said, we were going with the most likely answer. The idea being we are looking at the unit's door threshold, not the building's door threshold. So if you read F, and you saw it's pretty easy reading there, that will remind you in 3 months or 4 months or 9 months when you run into that, and you can actually go ahead and address those. All right, so now let's move into unit interior. We've got other questions. What if it is in the ground? Okay, before we move on, we're going to kind of put this one to bed. If it's in the ground, you're going to choose ground level, or below. Okay. All right, unit interior. We're not using the terms in this report, gross living area and basement. So they're sort of bringing it more in alignment with the ANSI standard, saying, hey, we're talking about finished and unfinished above grade and finished and unfinished below grade. Okay. They're asking for occupancy on each unit, which makes sense and has never really, been, a great story to tell if there's not fields available and things like that. Are the units metered separately? We're looking at kitchen and bathroom details, overall update status for bathrooms. We want update status for flooring. And then just like we had exterior quality and exterior condition for each building, now we have interior quality and interior condition for a unit or for each unit. Okay. So I do see people, we have a comment that I'm going too fast. These are being recorded. You have the materials, and this is designed to be an overview. We cannot possibly go through 365 pages with you in 4 one-hour sessions. So it is designed to be an overview. All right. Ask your questions if you do have your questions. So if I am going too fast, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that. I didn't think of that. I'm staying after for questions. So don't worry too much. You can replay. You'll have all the materials available to you, especially that F1, which is your friend. All right. So we also have a question in the Q&A for the front door elevation. What if the property's on a slope? So we would go to F. It tells us what to do when there's, if we're either below grade, so it's giving you those details, and we can visit that at the end as well if there's more discussion on it. All right. Here's an illustration of the unit interior. All right, so we have finished above grade, unfinished above grade, finished below grade, unfinished below grade. We're asking how many levels are in that particular unit, who's occupying that particular unit, are its utilities metered separately, and the room count for the entire unit. We then have the breakdown of rooms and areas here. And we'll see that as we look through an example. If we were to go to the interior example, here's unit interior. Here's another example, but you can see it has more levels, doesn't it? And so what it's doing is it is saying the below grade level 1 has these characteristics. Level 1 of above grade has these characteristics. and so on. All right, so we're seeing kind of a simple example on the slides. All right, but if there's more than one level, we would actually see that in the table below. All right, interior condition rating and interior quality rating. Right? We're not going to adjust for those in the sales comparison. We're adjusting based on the overall condition and quality like we looked at in session 2. I had a question here. Where do we find the videos? Those are going to be, as we looked at earlier in this session, they're going to be on ValueLink's website and Walitt Solutions website. All right, then they have specific questions related to the overall update status for bathrooms. Okay, note, just recognizing this is a big value and marketability sort of factor in many, many markets. And then also they're asking for the overall update status for flooring. And so again, flooring making up, a lot of the condition and quality in some cases anyway for various properties and various units. All right. So where we see it asking for the data source, in this case, they said assessor record and physical measurement. If those don't match, which is likely that they don't match, but the appraiser has chosen to indicate both of those, in the commentary, you would explain, that, if you're citing both, sort of reconcile, well, why are you citing both? If it's physical measurement and that's all you did, just type physical measurement if that's really what you relied on. So that, I think, answers one of those questions that I'm seeing here. How do you enter livable area if you have not measured it yet? I don't, not sure I understand that scenario. This, you would be measuring it if the scope was for you to measure it. Otherwise, you'd be including in for, if it was a desktop assignment, you'd be using data available to you. If it was a hybrid, you'd be using the property data report. So I don't really understand that question, but please ask it or again, or kind of put some nuance there. I'm not really sure what you're asking there. These are some significant changes that we're going to look at right now. Significant changes. Okay? Condition ratings have changed slightly. We're going to take a look at it and we're going to see where we can find them. And the overall update status, fully updated. It applies to new construction. I want that to sink in. So for those of you who have been working on UAD reports for many years, you know that fully updated was not to be used for new construction. You were supposed to say, well, it's not been updated. It was just built, but it wasn't updated. What they're saying now is fully updated could, or not could, is what you would say for new construction. Okay. I have a comment here. Most homeowners want us out pretty quickly. Scrolling on a pad for all these seems to take a while. And then we have another one. ANSY's too fancy, doesn't match marketing. Yeah, the ANSY, that's more of a policy thing. I know many folks have measured for ANSY, and it's been several years now. There do continue to be some aches and pains in doing that in certain markets, of course. But I always used a tablet or a phone for my my inspections, and I mean, I didn't run into that, and in fact, most of these types of notes were a lot of selections, and there's actually more selections than actually manually typing. So I think it's going to be, there's some trade-off. I don't know exactly how long what each portion will take because each person has such varying processes. So yeah, take a look and see kind of what's going to work for you. So really good comments, really good discussion here. All right. Okay, so again, change from the current UAD 2.6. We're moving to 3.6. So fully updated applies to new construction. I can't say that enough. All right. And we will look at the condition ratings. So we have someone saying, hey, where do we, what do we do for this or that? What we'll do is we'll take a look at the condition ratings. So here's an illustration. This is new construction. The appraiser has said that the condition is C1. Said these are fully updated. It's a new world. It's a new thinking. It's a new paradigm, they say, right? We used to say, not updated. Now we say fully updated. So what I'm talking about is new construction here. If there is a component that's fully updated in an existing house, you're still going to say it's fully updated. What my point here is the change. All right. The change is that if we have new construction, we're going to say that the update status is fully updated. And that is different to what we do today in the 2.6 typewriter forms. Okay. And then we see that here as well. All right, for the overall update status for bathrooms, overall update status for flooring. Okay. You can see here, interior features, very similar to what we do today, except, hey, look, we can actually spell them out in English language. We have choices there, so rather than typing, we're actually choosing. We can have a quality comment. We can have a condition comment as needed. You can see here, there's not always a need for it if it tells the story and there's nothing much to share there. And then condition status is, for these particular features, is also having a prescribed choice. So we have a question, if condition is new, shouldn't the status just be new? Well, what we're saying is these are choices in the data set. So if you have a nuance of what you want to write about, that's commentary. But you have choices to choose from. So you can't say, well, I don't want to put fully updated, I just want to put new. That's not an option. Under update status, there's only certain choices. And we'll take a look in just half a second right here. Fully updated, significantly updated, moderately updated, or not updated. All right, now this is repeated multiple times in F1. We're looking at the choices for bathrooms, but it's repeated for the flooring. It's repeated for, all of these that it applies to. All right, so fully updated applies in a new construction situation. All right, fully updated is when all elements are modernized, renovated, refinished, or remodeled, and in like new condition. So it includes gut rehabs, new additions, or the new construction, which we've not seen before. Okay. So we have a question, does fully updated relate to rehab properties? So we have the word rehab here. It's referring to that. You're going to say, well, if it's the bathroom that you're rating, you will say the bathroom either is or is not fully updated. You'll choose one of these four. So if the complete rehab applies to the bathroom, fully updated would apply. Okay, just remember, oops, excuse me. You use this rating on a variety of different questions. All right. So you can be very detailed in saying whether or not it is the rehab fully updated or not. And then condition rating. Here are the requirements to call something C1. So here's a question. Are we going to have to hand type every report with all pull downs, or is there a way to save the data and import? That's your software question, whether they have a database that you can keep for properties, whether you have template ability. That's going to probably look different from software to software, because I mean, right now it looks different from software to software. So I can't really give you an answer to that because I'm not designing those softwares. So what if only one of two baths is updated? So let's look back at the screen here. This is a really great example. Bath, full bath on level 1. Evidently, there's a second full bath on level 1. You say one is fully updated and one is one of the other options. So that's a really good question from Diana there. All right. So again, you're going to choose from the same 4 choices in various fields to delineate what's going on with each room, overall with the concept of bathrooms, overall with the concept of flooring, and so on. All right, so let's look at our condition rating requirements. We call something C1 only if it's 100% newly constructed, it's completed within the past 12 months, it has never been occupied, and it exhibits no signs of wear or tear. No signs of wear or tear. The foundation has to be 100% original to the new construction. It's kind of a weird way they worded this. 100% original, meaning original with the new construction. In other words, it's not an old foundation that was left there and is now being built on. So everything, when they say 100%, they mean 100%, including the foundation. Okay. In certain fields, there are 3 choices for updating. In others, there are 4. So that is a question, I think, from Joanne. So take a look, keep searching for update status, and you'll see different choices for the different ones. We just showed the one for bathrooms on the screen. Okay. It can have non-structural components composed of like new recycled materials. So that wouldn't be counted as sort of old material. They're saying, like, if the decking or the barn wood or the something is made from recycled, reclaimed, and things like that, it's still new construction occurring. All right. So 100% newly constructed dwelling with no physical depreciation. All right. What if the realtors and MLS does not have this for any of the comps? Well, it's going to be the same story as today. You call and get the information. If you don't have the information, you can't use it. But for condition and quality, you're going to look at photos like you do today, look at descriptions like you do today. So this isn't going to change what you're expected to do to understand the characteristics of the property, right? Okay. So gut rehabs do not have a new foundation. All right, so we're dealing with 2 concepts here. This is a good question. Let's go over this so people feel more comfortable with this. All right. Update status is different. See how these are 2 different fields. All right. In this case, it's new construction, so it's C1, meaning it's 100% newly constructed, that dwelling is, or excuse me, that unit is, right? Completed within the past 12 months, never been occupied, and there's no signs of wear or tear. However, you're looking at bathrooms, kitchens, overall for bathrooms. You're looking at overall for flooring. All right, so don't conflate the 2 here. Gut rehab, you could still have a gut rehab of a bathroom and say it's fully updated, but it could be a C3 condition rating. Okay, so we're talking about two different things. Is it new construction? And is the component that's being asked about fully updated? Which that's where the gut rehab comes from. You're going to call something fully updated if that component has experienced a gut rehab. Does everyone understand the difference between the condition rating for the entire unit versus this is talking about a room, this is talking about a room, this is talking about a room, and then this is talking about the bathrooms overall? Okay. All right, let's look at the report. So what I like to do when we have our CE education, I know this isn't CE education, but when we're looking at any sort of education, I learned very early on, look at something 2 or 3 times. We've looked at a lot of these things twice already. We looked at it in a slide text format, then we looked at the images. Now what we're going to do is let's scroll through the report a little bit. Okay. So this person is saying, so it seems like C1 is only new construction then. All right, let's go back. C1 is for new construction. 100% newly constructed, completed within the past 12 months, never been occupied, and exhibits no signs of wear or tear. Okay, is that clear as mud to everybody? All right. And then we have ratings like these. Some have 3 choices, some have 4, but we're just showing the example of the bathroom choices, where you choose whether it's fully updated, significantly updated, moderately updated, or not updated. Okay. And we'll look at this screen again as well. The question is it only for kitchens or only for bathrooms or for both? We see in this example, it's clearly for kitchen and any type of bathroom, whether it's full or half. And the question here is, what about the model home? For condition rating, would a model home exhibit no signs of wear or tear? I think most of the time, a model home exhibits some wear or tear. And so maybe conventional wisdom would tell us probably a model home is going to be a C2. That would be my guess. I'm not there standing next to you at the property, so don't say Josh told me to do this, right? We need to evaluate it, but that would probably be a pretty safe answer. All right. Okay, let's look one more time here. This is asking about rooms here. It's not asking only about certain levels. So this is above grade, below grade. It's just asking about the rooms. Right, so good question is, are they only asking about rooms above grade or below grade? They're just asking about those rooms, not only above grade. Good question, good detail, right? And I think probably all of you are going to go home and you're going to take a look at Appendix F. Remember, we've talked about many times, it will be on our websites, but it's also Fannie Mae Appendix F or Fannie Mae UAD. You'll find it. Believe me, you'll find it right off the bat. You're probably going to go home and read 367 pages, right? And no, I'm just pulling your leg. Have it available on PDF. You can see how quickly I'm searching for field names, right? It's really easy when you search through a PDF. So let's look at some of the sections we just looked at today. Again, the second or third time, because that helps solidify it. Maybe not memorizing the details, but it helps solidify what are the issues that I might be running into, right? Okay, so let's look at that subject property. We have units excluding the ADUs, meaning, okay, how many ADUs do you have? And then How many units do you have not counting those? All right, so this one, we'll just call it a house, right? It's just a house. No ADU, there's no nothing, okay? It's detached, all right? We can see some key drivers in a lot of the sections that will open or collapse in our software. We have to answer these questions. Gives kind of a quick rundown here. It's in a PUD. Homeowners are responsible for the exterior maintenance. It's not, like a site condo or something where someone else does. And in this illustration, it's not new construction. Okay. Let's go to the next section we've kind of gone over, and I want you to sort of see it in the layout, sort of instead of the little chunks I'm putting on the slide, right? Helps a little bit to see. All right, here's an example, total site size. This has one parcel. So below here, it's not asking, are the parcels contiguous? Right? Because there's only one parcel. If there were two or more, it would say, are they contiguous? And then it would ask, if you said no, okay, well, what's dividing them? Right? All right, so we of course type it, we type in, of course, the parcel number. Let's say it's a condo and there's a parking space parcel. It's not land with dwelling, it's parking space, right? So it's real, it's very encompassing, let's say, in terms of all the choices that they have out there. And remember, if there's some nuances, you always have areas to type, and this one doesn't use it, so this is a bad example to show you the commentary, but if the commentary had content, we would have the site commentary there. All right. All right, in this particular case is non-residential use. They said none. Remember, we saw the example where they said non-residential use, yes. And then it said, well, what is it? Okay, have there been modifications to the property to accommodate that non-residential use, right? That's why when people have said, well, how many pages are these new reports going to be? You don't know. It's collapsing and expanding, right? As you work through it, all right? We have the site influences, we have the views. All right, you can see this is actually a fairly simple example to probably encompass maybe, 90% of what we do. I don't know, I'm just throwing that number out there. I want you to sort of see maybe a normal report, an average report, if you will. All right, in this particular case, they've indicated there's no hazard zone. This has rolling topography. In this case, they've said it's adverse, and they've made this comment. Maybe that, remember how we can control many of the rows in our sales comparison approach? Maybe if this is relevant, the appraiser turns that row on in their sales comparison approach and says, yeah, I want to be able to show that I included comps with rolling topography. If you don't believe it's necessary, then you don't have that in your sales comparison approach. So there's a lot of flexibility in that respect. Okay. Energy efficient, we did look at that briefly in a previous session. I really want to show you that second or third time for the sections we looked at today, that we've explored today. Here's the dwelling exterior. It's a colonial style. There's one unit in this particular dwelling. We know that there's just one unit, so it's just a house. We already established that. It's 3 to 4 feet front door elevation. It's site built. Whoops. And there's no converted areas. Okay, continues. We have the characteristics there. Walls, foundation, roof, windows, just like we normally do today. We've got those other column, that table layout that we've looked at, right? Yeah, and we do have a comment here about bracketing. Bracketing is not, that would go to policy if they say, oh, you have to bracket this or you have to bracket that, right? But we would normally do that today, right? If we thought, in my example, the topography was somehow adverse, we're going to try to bracket. So it doesn't change the reality of your market, of what sales are available. Doesn't change whether or not you bracket, right? If you can bracket, great. If you can't, so this isn't changing policy. It's not changing appraisal practice. This is just simply saying how this information is laid out. And then again, with that note about the sales comparison approach, you can sort of turn on and off rows to have a more, or maybe we could say a more understandable report in some cases. If it's not relevant and not needed, don't have that row appear, right? All right. And so those are some of the sections we've seen today. You can certainly reach out with any questions. I will stay over just like I have other times. I'm totally willing to stay over a few minutes if you've got other questions. And remember, you can meet Joey and other folks from ValueLink at the Valuation Expo. I see a lot of hearts. I see a lot of thumbs ups. I see some thank yous coming through. I see a great session. All right. I love hearing great session. A lot of information, folks. A lot of information, folks. All right. So these are going to be available to you if you want to watch them again and just get another walkthrough over the basic concepts, or another walk through the approaches to value, or another walk through some of these sections we've looked at. We will also do a review in session 4 as well. So I'm going to hang on, and if there are any questions, but let's hear from Joey, and I'll try to see here if there's any questions, and I'll go ahead and answer those after sort of the official closing. Thank you, everybody.
I want to say thank you to everyone who attended today. Every time I do one of these trainings, I'm not an appraiser, and I see what you folks have to go through, and I have a vast appreciation for what you're doing every single day. It means a lot to me to watch you guys really ask and interact with everybody here. Again, scan the QR code. We'll be at Val Expo. Come by the booth. I will be there. At least let me shake your hand for all the things you do here, and we really appreciate you guys showing up today. Like I said, there will be a 4th session. I'm sure you've got invites for that. We'll see you guys there.
And I do see some questions like, when can we play around with the form or report? That's a software question. Go to your software providers, and this is a really good opportunity for all these software providers. They're building these, I want to say, from the ground up. I don't know if that's entirely correct, but basically it's going to be a very different user experience in these softwares. I'm actually going to be having, we've got 2 scheduled actually, who are going to be making presentations, not in session 4, but we'll bring everybody into the fold on that. But that's something I would encourage you to do research on your own as well. Even if you do see a snippet of a demo or something, do research on your own. They're sort of sharpening each other by having to reinvent themselves, along with some other newcomers coming in who are disrupting and coming up with new appraisal software. So do your homework on that front, right? Know what's going on in Appendix F, but you need to get a software that's best for you, right? Let's see, where would you get the information to indicate yes or no? Is the homeowner responsible for all exterior maintenance? That might be in a deed. It might be somewhere in the county record. It might relate to the project. If it's a condo project, there's descriptions saying, okay, what's included? It's the exterior. The exterior of the structures are all maintained by the project, as well as the lawn and so on and so forth. So that's, you would get those sources just as you do today, just understanding kind of the nuances and what's going on with the property and things like that. Makes more sense if you take training first or in addition. I've actually, yeah, I think different brains work different ways, Regina. I've actually had people say, this is going to be perfect because I'm taking the 7-hour CE class. and it shortly, and this is great. It's a nice primer. And other people said, "Oh, I love that I took the 7 hour, and now we could dive deeper into some of the things, but we didn't focus on everything in this." So, yeah, do what you need. If you find that you'd like to experience these after you take the full official CE class, remember the recordings are available, so you could go that route as well. So do what's best for your learning experience. Can't use the word project anymore. I didn't know about that. Can't attend. That's a question for ValueLink. Yeah, someone posted the UAD page. You can also, if you don't have the link, Fannie Mae UAD, you will get to their UAD page, believe me. And that's in session 4. We're going to go over all the materials and where to find them and so on. All right. I'm not sure I see any other questions. If I missed some questions, yeah, 7-hour class I do teach it. Teaching it, I've got a few scheduled to set up, one in particular out of Colorado, but it's also available by Zoom. So they're doing live classroom where I'll be with students and at the same time broadcasting. So take a look for it. You could even and I'm just answering the question here. I'm not trying to promote something outside of what we're doing here. I think we all get it. All right, we still have not seen the completion or update forms. That is session 4. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this, we had 4 sessions. We're in the 3rd session, and the update and completion forms, as I mentioned, are in the 4th section. I have seen tons of comments come through here. I have another person asking thoughts on my comment. Let's see. Is this related to clients sending emails asking if we're ready to accept assignments with the new UAD? As far as thoughts on that, I think you can let them know, okay, my software, I haven't seen the demo, but I've taken this class, I've taken this webinar, and so on and so forth. So I think that might help sort of boost their confidence in understanding kind of where's the profession at, where are you specifically at, that you're taking it seriously, you're educating yourself. So. All right, we have a question here. We will reiterate the resources in session 4, but I'll answer that for those still on. The comment is, I see Fannie Mae Appendix A through H, if you Google Fannie Mae UAD. And it says, I assume they're all important. You've concentrated on Appendix F. So we've looked at Appendix F. We've looked at Appendix C, like cat. Right? Those are big ones. And without knowing it, you've looked at Appendix D, which are all the example reports. The other appendices tend to not be as applicable to the appraiser doing the appraisal work. A lot of them are more technical specifications. Session 4, of course, if you're listening to a recording, this doesn't apply, but for live folks, it's tomorrow. Tomorrow, same time. All right. I think I've addressed. Can you explain the 10-foot? I'll get back to that. Is there going to be a 1004 MC? We looked at the market section in a previous session. So take a look at market section. We looked at that in a previous session. And the 10-foot, not really sure what we mean by 10-foot. Is it this, the front door elevation? I don't really know who you are. You're an anonymous user is what I'm seeing. So I don't know who to ask, or even if you're still live with us. But if you have questions about the front door elevation, then what you do is you can actually just search your PDF. Yours your PDF viewer might look a little bit different to mine, but here I typed in front door elevation, which is the field name, and then I found the description for that particular field and the requirements associated with it and the choices for the dropdown. All right, Joey, I am out of ideas. So thanks very much, everyone. Thank you, ValueLink, and we will see you in session 4. Thanks.